I called my husband Jake during his overnight business trip to Atlanta. A woman answered, saying he's in the shower. I identified myself as his wife, and the line went dead. Heart racing, hands trembling, I called repeatedly but no answer. Jake called back an hour later, sounding casual, claiming his colleague Carol borrowed his phone while he was meeting with clients. He laughed it off as a misunderstanding. I wanted to believe him, but something in his voice didn't sound right. My perfect marriage suddenly felt like a lie. Jake and I had been married for 7 years, high school sweethearts who built what I thought was an unshakable life together in suburban Boston. At 32, I loved my job as a school counselor, helping teenagers navigate their problems, while Jake, 34, traveled frequently as a pharmaceutical sales representative. Our friends called us the perfect couple. We owned a beautiful colonial house with a fenced yard where we planned to raise children someday. Every Sunday, we cooked breakfast together and planned our week ahead. It was comfortable, secure, and everything I had ever wanted. But over the past few months, subtle changes had crept into our relationship. Jake's business trips became more frequent. The affectionate texts throughout the day grew sparse. His phone suddenly acquired a new password. When I asked about it casually one evening, he mentioned something about company security protocols. I noticed he started taking calls in another room, his voice dropping to whispers I couldn't quite catch. The man who once couldn't keep his hands off me now seemed to flinch slightly at my touch, as if his mind was elsewhere. I dismissed my concerns, blaming myself for being paranoid and insecure. After all, Jake had never given me reason to doubt him before. We had built our relationship on trust since we were 17, sneaking out to meet at the old oak tree in my parents' backyard. I still remembered our wedding day, how he cried when I walked down the aisle in my mother's restored dress, how he promised to cherish me forever. Those weren't the actions of someone who would betray me. The morning after that disturbing phone call, Jake returned home as if nothing had happened. He kissed my forehead and dropped his overnight bag by the door, telling me about his productive meetings with clients. I studied his face for signs of deception, but saw only the familiar laugh lines around his eyes, the dimple in his right cheek that appeared when he smiled. "So who's Carol again?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady as I poured him coffee. "She's that new rep from Westfield Pharmaceuticals," he answered without hesitation. "The one I mentioned who transferred from the Chicago office. She's helping me with the Thompson account." "And she had your phone because?" Jake sighed, setting down his mug. "I told you, Marissa. I was in a meeting with the regional director and 2 physicians. Carol was outside taking notes. My phone kept buzzing, so I asked her to check if it was anything urgent." He reached for my hand across the kitchen island. "Honey, is everything okay? You seem tense." I pulled away, busying myself with wiping down the already clean countertop. "I'm fine, just tired. That woman hung up on me, and I was worried." "She probably got flustered," Jake said reasonably, finding out she was talking to her colleague's wife while he wasn't there. "I already told her it was unprofessional to hang up. Won't happen again." His explanation made perfect sense. So why did my stomach still twist with unease? Why couldn't I meet his eyes? That afternoon, I started a load of laundry while Jake napped, exhausted from his trip. As I emptied his suit pockets, my fingers closed around a folded paper. A hotel receipt from the Grand Plaza, Atlanta. I frowned, examining the details. Jake had told me his company booked him at the Marriott downtown. This was a different hotel entirely, and the receipt clearly showed charges for 2 guests with room service for dinner and breakfast. My hands trembled as I stared at the paper. There had to be an explanation. Maybe his reservation got changed last minute. Maybe he had a late dinner with clients. But why lie about something so trivial? For the first time in our marriage, I felt a wall between us, invisible but impenetrable. I folded the receipt and slipped it into my pocket, unsure what to do with this new information, but certain I couldn't ignore it. As I heard Jake stirring upstairs, I took a deep breath and decided to wait. I needed more than a hotel receipt and a strange phone call before confronting the man I had loved and trusted for half my life. But that night, as he slept soundly beside me, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if I really knew him at all. "He's definitely hiding something," Ashley said, stirring her latte with unnecessary force. We sat in a corner booth at our favorite cafe, away from other customers. I had finally broken down and confided in my best friend after a week of sleepless nights. "You think I'm crazy?" I asked, my voice small. Ashley's curly red hair bounced as she shook her head emphatically. "Absolutely not. Trust your gut, Marissa. Women have intuition for a reason." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "What are you going to do?" That was the question I had been asking myself for days. What exactly was I supposed to do? Hire a private investigator? Install spyware on his phone? The very thought made me sick. Those were actions taken by jealous, mistrustful wives in movies, not by Marissa Parker, who prided herself on her rational approach to life. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to confront him directly, but what if I'm wrong? What if there's a perfectly reasonable explanation, and I damage our marriage by accusing him?" "And what if you're right?" Ashley countered. Her directness was why I valued her friendship, even when her words stung. What then? I had no answer. That evening, after Ashley dropped me home, I found myself doing something I never imagined. While Jake was in the shower, I checked our phone bill online. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears as I scrolled through pages of calls. Most were familiar numbers, family members, colleagues, clients. But one number appeared repeatedly over the past few months, often late at night or early morning. Sometimes the calls lasted only seconds, other times for almost an hour. With shaking fingers, I dialed the number from my phone. "You've reached Carol. Leave a message." The voice was unmistakably the same one that had answered Jake's phone. I hung up without speaking, a cold weight settling in my stomach. Over the next few days, I became a detective in my own marriage. I discovered charges on our joint credit card for restaurants in Providence when Jake claimed to be in New York, a booking confirmation for a weekend seminar in Chicago that didn't appear on any pharmaceutical industry calendars I could find online, a receipt for a woman's scarf from a boutique in Burlington that never made its way into my closet. Each discovery was a tiny knife wound to my heart, but still not definitive proof. Jake always had explanations. The Providence dinner, a last-minute meeting when his New York conference got canceled. The Chicago seminar, a private company event. The scarf? An early birthday present he was saving for me, now ruined because I snooped. His answers came too quickly, too smoothly. The Jake I knew stumbled over fabrications, like the time he tried to convince me he hadn't eaten the last piece of cheesecake, chocolate evidence still on his chin. This polished, never-flustered version of my husband felt like a stranger. At night, I started attending therapy sessions with Dr. Winters, a compassionate woman in her 50s, who helped me work through my growing anxiety. "What's your greatest fear in this situation?" she asked during our third session. "That my entire marriage has been a lie," I whispered, finally giving voice to the thought that haunted me. That I never really knew him. "And if that were true," she prompted gently, "then I don't know who I am either." As weeks passed, Jake worked increasingly late hours. When home, he was distracted, often staring at his phone with a slight smile before quickly putting it away when he noticed me watching. We went through the motions of our life together like actors in a play, saying the right lines but with no genuine connection. One Wednesday in April, I decided to surprise Jake at work for lunch. We hadn't shared a meal alone together in weeks, both supposedly busy with work commitments. I picked up sandwiches from his favorite deli and drove to his office building downtown, rehearsing casual conversation topics to keep things light. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile. "Marissa! So nice to see you. Jake didn't mention you were coming by today." "It's a surprise," I explained, holding up the takeout bag. She buzzed me through to the elevators. I navigated the familiar hallways to Jake's corner office, nodding at colleagues who recognized me from company functions. When I reached his assistant's desk, Brenda looked up in surprise. "Oh, Marissa, I wasn't expecting to see you today. Just bringing lunch for Jake," I explained, already moving toward his office door. Brenda's face registered confusion. "Jake took the day off today," she said slowly. "Something about meeting with a real estate agent. Did he not tell you?" The sandwich bag nearly slipped from my fingers. "A real estate agent?" "Yes, he emailed first thing this morning. Said he'd be unavailable all day." She tilted her head, studying my expression. "Is everything okay?" I forced a smile. Years of maintaining composure in difficult situations with my students coming to my aid. "Of course. I must have misunderstood. Pregnancy brain, you know." The lie slipped out effortlessly, surprising me. Brenda's face immediately softened with understanding and excitement. "Congratulations! Jake hasn't said anything yet." "We're keeping it quiet for now," I said, backing toward the elevators. "Please don't mention I stopped by." As I drove home, uneaten sandwiches on the passenger seat, my mind raced. Jake had lied about going to work. He was meeting with a real estate agent. What property could he possibly be looking at that I didn't know about? We had discussed buying a vacation cottage someday, but always as something for the distant future. When he came home that evening, I was waiting in the kitchen, dinner already on the table. Casual, normal. "How was work?" I asked, watching his face carefully. Jake loosened his tie, reaching for the wine bottle. "Productive." Thompson finally agreed to the new distribution terms. I nodded, taking a sip of water to steady myself. "That's great. And how was the real estate agent?" His hand froze momentarily before continuing to pour his wine. If I hadn't been scrutinizing his every move, I might have missed it. "What real estate agent?" "The one you met with today instead of going to the office." Jake's expression shifted from confusion to understanding to what appeared to be genuine excitement. It was supposed to be a surprise. He set down his glass and pulled out his phone. "I was going to tell you on our anniversary next month, but since you already know." He swiped through his photos and showed me several listings for lakefront properties in New Hampshire. "I've been researching investment properties. Thought we could buy something that would generate rental income now and become our retirement home later." He looked so sincere, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. For a moment, I felt ashamed of my suspicions. This was the Jake I knew, the planner, always thinking about our future. Then I noticed the date stamp on the property photos. "Yesterday." "When exactly did you take these pictures?" Jake's smile faltered slightly. "Yesterday. I drove up to scout the area before meeting the agent today." "But yesterday you were in meetings all day. You texted me from your office." A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "I meant the day before. I've been looking at so many properties lately. They're all blending together. And why would you need to hide looking at investment properties from me? Since when do we make major financial decisions separately?" "It was going to be a surprise gift," he insisted, his voice hardening. "I didn't realize I needed permission to do something nice for my wife." The conversation escalated into our first major argument in years. Jake accused me of spying on him, of not trusting him. I countered with the inconsistencies I'd discovered, the strange calls, the hotel receipt. He dismissed each one, his explanations growing more elaborate and less convincing. "You know what?" he finally snapped, grabbing his keys. "I can't talk to you when you're like this. You've built this whole conspiracy theory in your head, and nothing I say matters." He stormed out, the front door slamming behind him. I stood in our kitchen, dinner growing cold on the table, wondering how we had reached this point. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Is everything okay?" Jake just called me, sounding upset. Carol. Of course he would call her. I didn't respond, but saved the number. Another piece in the puzzle I didn't want to complete. Jake didn't come home until after midnight. I pretended to be asleep when he crawled into bed, keeping to his side of the mattress, the space between us vast and empty. The next morning I woke to find Jake gone but a bouquet of tulips on the kitchen counter, my favorite flowers. The card simply read, "I'm sorry. Let's talk tonight." For a moment, hope flickered in my chest. Maybe we could fix this. Maybe I had overreacted. I spent the day in a daze at work, barely present during student counseling sessions, which wasn't fair to the teenagers who needed my full attention. During my lunch break, I called Ashley. "He says he wants to talk tonight," I told her. "Maybe I've been making too much of this." "Maybe," she allowed. "But don't let flowers erase what your instincts are telling you." That evening, Jake arrived home early with takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant and a bottle of the expensive wine we saved for special occasions. He seemed genuinely contrite as we sat at the dining table. "I've been distant lately," he admitted, refilling my wine glass. "Work has been stressful with these new accounts, and I took it out on you. I'm sorry." "I'm sorry too," I said cautiously, "for checking up on you. That's not who we are." Jake reached for my hand. "No more secrets. I promise to be more transparent about my schedule, my work, everything." His thumb traced circles on my palm, a gesture so familiar it brought tears to my eyes. "I love you, Marissa. More than anything." I wanted desperately to believe him. The next 2 weeks were like a second honeymoon. Jake called regularly when traveling, brought me small gifts, suggested weekend activities together. He even mentioned starting a family, something we had put off for years as we focused on our careers. The attentive, loving man I married seemed to have returned. My suspicions began to feel like a bad dream, a temporary madness I had thankfully overcome. I even felt guilty for doubting him, for nearly destroying our marriage over circumstantial evidence and paranoid thoughts. Then came our weekend trip to a bed and breakfast in Vermont, Jake's suggestion for reconnecting. The countryside inn was charming, our room cozy with a 4-poster bed and views of rolling hills. We hiked during the day and enjoyed intimate dinners by candlelight. For the first time in months, I felt truly happy, the knot of anxiety in my chest finally loosening. Saturday evening, as we prepared for dinner, Jake's phone kept lighting up with notifications. He glanced at it repeatedly, his expression carefully neutral. "Everything okay?" I asked, applying mascara in the bathroom mirror. "Just work," he said dismissively. "The Thompson account again. On a Saturday night?" "Pharmaceutical sales never sleep," he joked. But something in his tone rang false. When Jake stepped into the shower, his phone lit up again on the nightstand. I stood frozen, torn between respecting his privacy and needing to know the truth. The sound of running water seemed to grow louder as I stared at the device, my moral compass wavering. Before I could second-guess myself, I picked up the phone. The screen showed several messages from Carol W. I scrolled through them, each word a hammer to my heart. "Missing you already. Can't wait to see our place next week. When are you telling her the truth? This sneaking around is getting old. Love the pictures from today. You look happy for once." I set the phone down with trembling hands, bile rising in my throat. There it was, undeniable proof of what I had feared for months. Jake was having an affair with Carol, and apparently, they were planning a future together. Our place. Those 2 words demolished any possibility of misunderstanding. When Jake emerged from the bathroom, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, his phone in my hand. "Who's Carol?" I asked quietly, though I already knew. His face drained of color. "Marissa, I can explain." "Please do," I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded while my world crumbled around me. "Explain how you're buying property with another woman. Explain why she calls it our place. Explain why she's waiting for you to tell me the truth." Jake sat heavily in the armchair across from me, his shoulders slumped in defeat. No more denials, no more elaborate stories. "It wasn't supposed to happen," he began, not meeting my eyes. Carol and I met at a conference in Chicago last year. It was just physical at first. A stupid mistake after too many drinks. 8 months ago? I interrupted, thinking back to the Chicago trip he had extended by 2 days for additional meetings. He nodded miserably. But then it became more. We connected in a way that he trailed off, perhaps realizing there was no way to finish that sentence without hurting me further. In a way that we don't, I finished for him. I never meant to hurt you, Marissa. I was going to end it multiple times, but then things got complicated. How exactly do things get complicated, Jake? Either you want to be married to me, or you don't. It's actually very simple. He looked up finally, his eyes red-rimmed. I do love you. I always have. But with Carol, it's different, exciting, new. Each word was a slap. I had given this man a decade of my life, had built my entire future around him, and he was throwing it away for exciting and new. Get out, I whispered. Go back to Boston. I'll find my own way home tomorrow. Marissa, please. We can work through this. Couples do it all the time. We could try therapy. A hollow laugh escaped me. Therapy? You've been living a double life, Jake. You've been planning a future with another woman while lying to my face every single day. What exactly would therapy fix? I'll end it with her, he promised desperately. Completely. Forever. I'll change jobs if I have to. Part of me wanted to believe him, the part that remembered the 17-year-old boy who had promised to love me forever under a summer sky full of stars. But that boy was gone, replaced by this stranger I no longer recognized. I need time, I said finally. I can't make any decisions right now. That night, I slept in the inn's second bedroom after explaining our situation to the sympathetic owner. As I lay awake, listening to the unfamiliar creaks of the old house, I realized I had reached a turning point. Whatever happened next would define the rest of my life. The question was, did I have the strength to face it alone? I stayed with Ashley for a week after returning from Vermont, unable to face the home Jake and I had shared. He called and texted constantly, his messages alternating between desperate pleas and promises of change. Ashley wanted me to block his number, but something held me back. 15 years of history isn't erased in a moment, even one as devastating as discovering your husband's betrayal. What do you want to do? Dr. Winters asked during our emergency session. She had fit me in between regular appointments when I called in tears from Ashley's guest bedroom. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to throw away 15 years of memories and never see him again. Another part remembers the good times and wonders if we could somehow salvage something from this wreckage. Both reactions are normal, she assured me. There's no right answer, only what's right for you. After 10 days of soul-searching and endless conversations with Ashley and Dr. Winters, I agreed to meet Jake at a neutral location, a quiet cafe halfway between our house and Ashley's apartment. He was already waiting when I arrived, looking haggard with several days' stubble and dark circles under his eyes. Thank you for coming, he said, rising as I approached the table. I sat across from him, maintaining a physical and emotional distance. I'm here to listen, I said simply. Jake took a deep breath. I've ended things with Carol, completely and permanently. I showed her text messages to prove it. He pushed his phone across the table. You can read them if you want. I glanced at the screen but didn't touch it. That doesn't undo what happened, Jake. I know. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. I know I've broken your trust in the worst possible way, but I want to try to rebuild it, if you'll let me. I've already called a therapist who specializes in couples recovering from infidelity. I'm willing to do whatever it takes, Marissa. I don't want to lose you. His words seemed sincere, his eyes pleading. The man across from me looked genuinely remorseful, broken by his own actions. How do I know this isn't just another performance? I asked quietly. You've been lying to me for months, Jake. You've gotten very good at it. Fair question, he acknowledged. I can only prove it with time and actions. Words aren't enough anymore. I understand that. We talked for hours, dissecting our marriage, his affair, the fractures that had developed between us long before Carol entered the picture. For the first time in months, perhaps years, we were completely honest with each other. It was painful, but also strangely cathartic. 3 days later, I moved back home with conditions. Jake would sleep in the guest room. We would attend couples therapy twice weekly. He would provide complete access to his phone, email, and schedule. If I felt even a hint of deception, I would file for divorce immediately. The next 4 weeks were the hardest of my life. Every therapy session exposed raw nerves and painful truths. Jake admitted to feeling trapped in our predictable life, to resenting my close relationship with my family when his was so distant. I confessed to taking him for granted, to focusing on what our marriage lacked rather than what it had. Slowly, painfully, we began rebuilding. Jake changed jobs to avoid contact with Carol. He checked in regularly throughout the day, not because I demanded it, but to reassure me. We established weekly date nights, something we had abandoned years ago. For the first time since discovering his affair, I felt cautiously hopeful. Then came the day I needed to use Jake's laptop for work when mine crashed before an important presentation. He handed it over without hesitation, another small sign of his commitment to transparency. As I finished my work, an email notification appeared in the corner of the screen. From Greenwich Realty. Subject: Final paperwork for Hamilton Street, condo purchase. My stomach dropped as I clicked on the message. It contained details about closing costs and final walkthrough schedules for a condominium purchase, along with congratulations to the new owners. With shaking hands, I opened Jake's email search bar and typed Greenwich Realty. Dozens of messages appeared, dating back months. Correspondence about property viewings, mortgage pre-approval, decoration options. The most recent emails mentioned both signatures required and joint ownership documentation. I was still staring at the screen when Jake came home from his therapy session, earlier than expected. One look at my face told him what I had discovered. "Marissa, I can explain," he began, the same words he had used in Vermont. "Don't." I cut him off, my voice deadly quiet. "Don't you dare try to explain this away. You've been planning to buy property with her while pretending to work on our marriage." While sitting in therapy talking about rebuilding trust, Jake collapsed onto the couch, all pretense falling away. "I was trying to find the right time to tell you," he said, his voice hollow. "I've been living a double life for so long. I couldn't figure out how to untangle it." "Tell me what exactly? That therapy was just a stalling tactic while you planned your exit strategy?" He looked up, eyes red but dry. "Carol's pregnant." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady myself, the room suddenly spinning. In all my worst-case scenarios, I had never imagined this. 3 months? He continued, each word driving the knife deeper. "We found out right before our Vermont trip. That's why she was pushing me to tell you the truth. She didn't want to raise our child in secrecy." Our child. The casual possessiveness of that phrase shattered something fundamental inside me. The life Jake and I had talked about building together, the children we had planned to have someday, he was now creating with someone else. "How long have you been planning to leave?" I asked, needing to understand the full extent of his deception. Jake's shoulders slumped. "I signed the purchase agreement for the condo 2 months ago. Carol and I planned to move in together after telling you everything." He paused, his voice dropping. "I was a coward, Marissa. I couldn't bear to see the look on your face, the one you're giving me right now. So I kept putting it off, trying to find the perfect moment. While letting me believe we were fixing our marriage, the anger finally broke through my shock, white-hot and clarifying. While watching me struggle and hope and try, knowing the whole time it was pointless. "It wasn't all a lie," he protested weakly. "Part of me wanted to try, to see if what we had could be saved." "What we had is dead," I said flatly. It died the moment you decided to start a family with another woman behind my back. I stood up, suddenly needing to be anywhere but in this house with this stranger. I want you gone by tomorrow. File the divorce papers as soon as possible. I don't care about the terms. Take whatever you want. Just get out of my life. As I drove away from the house we had made a home, tears blinded me so completely I had to pull over on a side street. I called the only person I knew would understand. It's over, Ashley, I sobbed into the phone. Jake got her pregnant. They're buying a condo together. Everything was a lie. Oh, Marissa, she whispered. I'm so sorry. Come to me right now. You shouldn't be alone. That night, curled on Ashley's couch with a blanket that couldn't warm the chill inside me, I felt utterly destroyed. The life I had built, the future I had planned, the identity I had formed as part of a couple, all gone in an instant. In their place was only emptiness, and a question that haunted me as I finally fell into exhausted sleep. Who was I now that everything I thought I knew had proven false? The days following Jake's final betrayal passed in a blur of paperwork, tears, and numb disbelief. He moved out as requested, taking only personal items, and leaving me a letter I couldn't bring myself to read. Friends and family rallied around me with casseroles and concerned calls, but their support felt like it was reaching me through thick glass, muffled and distant. I returned to work too soon, thinking routine would help. Instead, I found myself staring blankly during sessions, unable to focus on my students' problems when my own seemed insurmountable. After breaking down in tears while discussing college applications with a bewildered senior, my principal gently suggested I take a leave of absence. You help everyone else, Marissa, she said kindly. Now it's time to help yourself. With unstructured days stretching before me, depression settled in like an unwelcome houseguest. I moved through my empty home like a ghost, sleeping in the guest room because our bed held too many memories. Some days I couldn't find the energy to shower or change clothes. Food lost its taste. Night after night, I relived every moment of our relationship, searching for signs I had missed, warnings I had ignored. Dr. Winters increased our sessions to twice weekly, helping me process the trauma of Jake's betrayal. You're experiencing grief, she explained during a particularly difficult session. The death of your marriage, your future as you imagined it, and your trust in someone you loved deeply. Will it ever stop hurting? I asked, clutching yet another damp tissue. The pain will transform, she answered honestly. Right now it's acute, overwhelming. With time and work, it will become something you carry differently, something that doesn't define you. Her words offered little comfort in the moment, but I clung to them in my darkest hours, a promise that someday I might feel whole again. A month after Jake moved out, divorce papers arrived by courier. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the manila envelope for hours before finding the courage to open it. The clinical language describing the irreconcilable differences between Jacob Parker and Marissa Parker seemed to belong to strangers, not the couple who had once whispered promises of forever under shared blankets. What caught my attention, however, wasn't the sterile legal terminology but the proposed settlement terms. Jake was asking for half the value of our house, 75% of our retirement savings, and most of our joint investments. According to his attorney, these requests reflected his greater contribution to our financial stability over the years. I called Ashley in tears. How can he do this? After everything else, now he wants to take the home I've poured my heart into. He can try, she said grimly. But you need your own lawyer, Marissa. Today. The next morning, I met with Patricia Garcia, a divorce attorney Ashley's sister had used during her own messy split. Patricia was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s whose office walls were covered with family photos and law degrees in equal measure. So, your cheating husband wants to financially devastate you on his way out the door, she summarized after reviewing the papers. Not happening on my watch. I don't know if I have the energy to fight him, I admitted. Part of me just wants this over with, whatever it costs. Patricia leaned forward, her expression softening slightly. That's exactly what he's counting on, Marissa, that you'll be too emotionally exhausted to stand up for yourself. But consider this. What you agree to now affects your entire future. Your ability to stay in your home, to retire comfortably, to rebuild your life. She was right, of course. As much as I wanted to crawl into bed and pull the covers over my head until this nightmare ended, I couldn't surrender everything I had worked for. Jake had already taken enough. What's our next step? I asked, sitting a little straighter. Patricia smiled approvingly. We go through your finances with a fine-tooth comb. I want to know about every account, every investment, every property, joint or separate. That weekend, Ashley came over with pizza and wine to help me organize financial records. As we sorted through years of paperwork, I noticed something troubling. This doesn't make sense, I said, comparing bank statements from the past year. There are regular transfers from our joint checking account to an account I don't recognize. Ashley looked over my shoulder. How much? $2,000 a month for the past 10 months. That's $20,000 missing. With growing alarm, I searched for more discrepancies. Credit card statements showed charges for jewelry and weekend getaways I knew nothing about. Tax documents revealed investment accounts Jake had never mentioned. The more we dug, the clearer it became. Jake had been systematically moving money for months, perhaps longer. Patricia was livid when I brought her my findings on Monday. This is financial infidelity on top of the emotional kind, she declared, and potentially illegal if he's hiding assets during divorce proceedings. She recommended hiring a forensic accountant to trace the missing funds and uncover any other hidden accounts. It's an investment in your future, she insisted, when I balked at the additional expense. 2 days later, Patricia called with a recommendation. My office frequently works with Tyler Matthews. He's one of the best forensic accountants in the state, especially for divorce cases. I agreed to meet him, expecting someone like the stern accountant who had done our taxes for years. All wire-rimmed glasses and monotone explanations. Instead, Tyler turned out to be a warm, approachable man around 40 with kind eyes and an ability to explain complex financial concepts in terms I could easily understand. Financial deception often accompanies other forms of betrayal, he explained as we reviewed my documents. People who lead double lives typically need money to support them. Over the next few weeks, Tyler uncovered the full extent of Jake's financial misconduct. A separate checking account containing over $50,000, investment portfolios I'd never known about, and the down payment for the condo he'd purchased with Carol, using funds from our joint savings. He's been planning his exit for over a year, Tyler concluded during our final meeting, systematically moving assets to position himself financially for his new life. I felt sick thinking about Jake's careful calculation, the premeditated nature of his betrayal. While I had been planning anniversary trips and discussing starting a family, he had been methodically dismantling our financial partnership. Armed with Tyler's findings, Patricia filed counter-documents requesting a more equitable division of assets, including compensation for the funds Jake had diverted. His response came swiftly and aggressively. He's threatening to drag this out for years if you don't accept his original terms, Patricia reported, after a contentious phone call with his attorney. And he's implying he has information that could damage your professional reputation if this gets messy. What information? I asked, baffled. I'm a school counselor with a spotless record. Patricia shrugged. It's most likely a bluff. But be prepared for things to get ugly. Men like your husband don't like being called out on their behavior. That evening, Jake called for the first time since moving out. His voice was cold, controlled in a way that felt menacing. My lawyer says your counterproposal is unreasonable, he began without preamble. I'm trying to be fair, Marissa, but you're making this difficult. Fair? I repeated incredulously. You stole from our joint accounts for months. You used our money to buy property with your pregnant girlfriend, and now you're threatening me? I'm not threatening anything, he replied smoothly. I'm simply pointing out that a drawn-out legal battle isn't in anyone's best interest, especially not yours. What's that supposed to mean? Just that certain things might come to light, things that could affect your job working with impressionable young people. I almost laughed at the absurdity. What exactly do you think you have on me, Jake? I'm not the one who cheated and stole. Remember that incident with Sean Thompson 2 years ago? The suicidal student whose parents threatened to sue the school because you allegedly missed warning signs? I have emails showing you were aware of his issues weeks before you claimed. My blood ran cold. Sean had been a troubled student who thankfully received help before his depression became critical, but the case had been complicated and stressful. The emails Jake mentioned were private venting between spouses. Taken out of context, they could indeed make me look negligent. You would really stoop that low? I whispered. Use a vulnerable student as leverage in our divorce? I don't want to, he said, his tone softening into the manipulative concern I now recognized. That's why I'm suggesting we keep this simple. Accept my initial offer, Marissa. Walk away with enough to start fresh. Everyone wins. After he hung up, I sat in stunned silence. The man I had loved for 15 years was now threatening to destroy my career to protect his financial interests. It was beyond betrayal, beyond cruelty. It was the action of someone I didn't recognize at all. For a moment, I considered giving in, accepting his terms just to end this nightmare. The thought of a prolonged legal battle, of having my professional reputation questioned, felt overwhelming. Then anger rose through my exhaustion and fear, hot and clarifying. Jake had taken my trust, my love, my future plans. I would not let him take my home and financial security too, not without a fight. The next morning, I called Patricia and told her about Jake's threats. We push back harder, she said firmly. He thinks you'll crumble. Let's show him how wrong he is. Despite my newfound determination, that night I hit rock bottom. Alone in the house that no longer felt like home, surrounded by evidence of Jake's betrayal, I collapsed on the kitchen floor in tears, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what I had lost and the battle still ahead. For hours I lay there, unable to move, wondering if I would ever feel whole again. Miss Parker? The doctor will see you now. I looked up from the waiting room magazine I'd been pretending to read, my mind a million miles away. It was my annual physical, an appointment I'd almost canceled given everything else happening in my life. Only Dr. Winter's gentle insistence that I needed to care for my physical health, as well as my emotional well-being, had convinced me to keep it. Dr. Stephanie Liu had been my physician for 6 years. She frowned slightly as she took my vitals, noting my significant weight loss and elevated blood pressure. Everything okay, Marissa? These numbers are concerning. I hadn't planned to tell her about my personal crisis, but something about her genuine concern broke through my carefully constructed composure. Before I knew it, I was sobbing in her examination room, sharing the abbreviated version of my marriage's collapse. Dr. Liu listened without judgment, then insisted on running additional tests. Prolonged stress can impact your physical health in serious ways, she explained. Let's make sure we're not missing anything. A week later, I returned to discuss the results, expecting nothing significant. Instead, Dr. Liu showed me test results indicating concerning liver function and potential ulcers developing in my stomach. Your body is manifesting the stress you've been under, she explained gravely. If you continue on this path, the damage could become permanent. What am I supposed to do? I asked, desperation edging my voice. I can't just stop the divorce or make Jake behave ethically. No, she agreed. But you can prioritize your well-being even in the midst of this storm. Proper nutrition, sleep hygiene, moderate exercise, stress reduction techniques. She scribbled a prescription. And these for your stomach, to prevent further damage. As I left the clinic clutching medication and a nutrition plan, The reality of my situation hit me with new clarity. Jake's betrayal wasn't just breaking my heart, it was literally making me sick. I had always prided myself on being strong, capable, independent. Yet here I was, allowing his actions to destroy not just my emotional health, but my physical well-being too. Something shifted inside me that day. A line had been crossed. I could continue letting this situation consume me, potentially causing permanent health problems. Or I could fight back, not just legally, but by reclaiming my power and well-being. That evening, instead of my usual routine of crying while picking at takeout food, I followed Dr. Liu's nutrition plan and cooked a proper meal. I took my medication, went for a short walk around the neighborhood, and practiced the breathing exercises Dr. Winters had taught me. Small steps, but they represented something monumental, taking control back. The next morning, I called Patricia with renewed determination. "I want to move forward aggressively," I told her. "Jake thinks I'll back down because I'm too broken to fight. He's wrong." "That's what I like to hear," she responded approvingly. "Let's schedule a meeting with Tyler to finalize the financial evidence." 2 days later, I sat in Patricia's office with Tyler, reviewing the comprehensive report he had prepared, documenting Jake's financial duplicity. The systematic way Jake had moved money, established separate accounts, and hidden assets painted a picture of calculated deception that extended far beyond an impulsive affair. "This is extremely compelling evidence," Patricia said, studying the detailed spreadsheets. "Judges don't look kindly on spouses who hide assets during divorce proceedings." "There's something else," Tyler added, hesitation evident in his voice. "I wasn't sure whether to include this, but I think you should know." He pulled up additional bank records, showing regular transfers from Jake's hidden account to a separate account in Carol's name, starting nearly 18 months earlier. The affair has been going on much longer than the 8 months he admitted to, I realized, a fresh wave of pain washing over me despite my determination to stay strong. "I'm sorry," Tyler said quietly. "I know this must be difficult to see." "It is," I acknowledged. "But I'd rather know the full truth, no matter how painful." Patricia squeezed my hand briefly before returning to her professional demeanor. "This strengthens our position considerably. Now, regarding his threats about your work emails, I've been thinking about that," I interjected. "I spoke with my principal yesterday, told her everything. The emails Jake mentioned were me venting about a difficult situation, not evidence of professional negligence. I've always kept meticulous records of all student interactions." "Smart move," Patricia nodded approvingly, taking away his ammunition before he can use it. By the time the meeting concluded, we had a comprehensive strategy. Patricia would present Jake's attorney with the forensic accounting evidence and a final settlement proposal. I would keep the house and my full retirement accounts, plus compensation for the money he had diverted. In exchange, he would keep his personal retirement accounts and be released from any further financial obligations. "If he doesn't accept, we go to court," Patricia warned. "It could get messy in public." "I understand," I said firmly. "But I'm done being manipulated and taken advantage of." Jake's response came 3 days later. A blistering phone call full of accusations and threats. "You think you can extort me with some creative accounting?" he raged. "I'll fight this all the way to the state Supreme Court if necessary. I'll make sure everyone knows you're an emotionally unstable woman trying to punish her husband for moving on." I listened silently until his tirade ended, then spoke calmly. "Are you finished, Jake? Because here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept the settlement offer, or the financial records showing how you've been hiding assets go to the judge. Your choice." "You wouldn't dare," he hissed. "You'd be embarrassed too, when people learn how clueless you were about our finances all these years." "I'm past caring about embarrassment," I replied truthfully. "Pride isn't worth what this fight is costing me. But you still care about your reputation, don't you? What will your pharmaceutical clients think when they learn you can't be trusted with money? What will Carol think when she realizes you've been financially deceptive from the beginning of your relationship?" After a long silence, Jake's voice returned, cold and controlled. "You've changed, Marissa." "Yes," I agreed. "I have." 2 weeks later, Jake accepted our settlement terms. The relief I expected to feel was tempered by exhaustion and lingering sadness. Yes, I had won the legal battle, kept my home, and secured my financial future. But I had lost 15 years of my life to a man who had betrayed me in the most fundamental ways possible. No legal victory could erase that pain. The day we signed the final divorce papers was surreal. Jake and I sat at opposite ends of a conference table, avoiding eye contact as we initialed page after page documenting the end of our marriage. The gold wedding band I had removed months earlier had left a pale indentation on my finger, a ghost of the commitment I had believed would last forever. As we rose to leave, Jake paused. "I am sorry, Marissa, for whatever that's worth now." I studied his face, searching for the man I had loved for so long. "I know you think you are," I replied finally, "but you're mostly sorry you got caught." Outside the attorney's office, Ashley waited with a bottle of champagne. To freedom, she toasted when we reached her car, and to never settling for less than you deserve again. I took a small sip, grateful for her support, but unable to fully embrace celebration. The divorce was finalized, but my journey was far from complete. I had survived, kept my home and financial stability, but rebuilding my life, my trust, and my sense of self would take much longer than the 6 months it had taken to end my marriage legally. That night, alone in my house for the first time as a legally single woman, I stood in the master bedroom I had avoided for months. Slowly, deliberately, I began removing Jake's lingering presence. Photographs, mementos, the remaining clothes he hadn't bothered to claim. Each item went into a donation box, not out of anger but as an act of reclamation. This space was mine now, to rebuild as I chose. As I worked, I thought about Tyler, whose patience and kindness had been unexpected bright spots during the darkest period of my life. We had developed a friendship over the past months, occasionally meeting for coffee to discuss updates in the case. Nothing romantic, but a connection I valued nonetheless. Maybe someday I would be ready to trust again, to open my heart to possibilities beyond the wreckage Jake had left behind. For now, though, I needed to focus on healing myself. Dr. Liu's latest tests showed improvement in my physical health as I prioritized self-care. Dr. Winters and I continued our work on processing the trauma and rebuilding my sense of self. Small steps, day by day, toward a future I was only beginning to imagine. I couldn't see the complete path forward yet, but for the first time since that fateful phone call to Jake's hotel room, I felt something like hope stirring inside me. Not the naive hope of my earlier life, but something tempered by experience, stronger and more resilient. Whatever came next, I would face it on my terms, with the hard-won knowledge that I was stronger than I had ever imagined possible. 6 months after my divorce was finalized, I stood in my transformed living room and allowed myself a moment of genuine pride. Gone was the leather sectional Jake had insisted on, replaced by a comfortable blue sofa that better suited the space. The walls, once beige because Jake thought color was too feminine, now gleamed with a warm sage green that changed beautifully with the light throughout the day. Every change, from the new area rug to the rearranged furniture, represented a decision made solely for myself. "This looks amazing," Ashley declared, arriving with takeout for our weekly dinner. "You've completely reimagined the space. It feels like mine now," I said, realizing the significance of those simple words. For months after Jake left, I had felt like a guest in my own home, surrounded by remnants of our shared life. Now, I had reclaimed the space as my own sanctuary. The transformation extended far beyond interior design. My health had steadily improved, with Dr. Liu pronouncing me back on track during my last checkup. The panic attacks that had once been frequent visitors had diminished to rare occurrences. I had returned to work full-time, finding renewed purpose in helping my students navigate their own challenges. Perhaps most significantly, I had joined a support group for women recovering from divorce and betrayal. Every Wednesday evening, we gathered in a community center meeting room, sharing stories and strategies. The validation of hearing others describe feelings and experiences so similar to mine had been powerfully healing. Even more important was witnessing women further along in their journeys, thriving and happy in their new lives. Monica from my support group invited me to join her book club, I told Ashley as we settled at the dining table with our Thai food. I'm thinking about going. That's great, she encouraged. Expanding your social circle is important. Speaking of social circles, I began hesitantly. Tyler called yesterday. He asked if I might want to get coffee sometime. Not to discuss the divorce or finances, just coffee. Ashley's eyebrows shot up. Tyler, the forensic accountant? The cute one with the nice eyes and finance brain who helped you take Jake to the cleaners? I laughed, feeling a flush rise to my cheeks. That's the one. And what did you say? That I'd think about it. Ashley studied me over her pad thigh. And what are you thinking? I pushed my food around thoughtfully. I'm thinking that the idea doesn't terrify me as much as it would have 6 months ago, but I'm not sure I'm ready yet. Ready is a spectrum, not a destination, Ashley pointed out. Maybe coffee with a nice, honest man who already knows your story is exactly where you are on that spectrum right now. Perhaps she was right. The wall I had built around my heart after Jake's betrayal had begun to develop small windows, places where trust might eventually find its way back in. Not naive trust, but the wiser, more discerning kind that comes after profound disappointment. The next day, I texted Tyler accepting his coffee invitation. We met at a small cafe downtown, the initial awkwardness of our new context quickly giving way to comfortable conversation. Tyler talked about his passion for financial literacy education, his volunteer work teaching budgeting skills to high school students. I shared stories about my counseling work, my renewed interest in photography. Neither of us mentioned Jake or the divorce. As weeks passed, coffee with Tyler became a regular part of my routine, something I looked forward to without pressure or expectation. We were building a friendship first, both understanding the value of moving slowly, of establishing trust before anything else. 3 months into our coffee meetings, my doorbell rang unexpectedly on a Saturday afternoon. When I opened it, I found a woman I had never met, but instantly recognized from photographs I'd seen during the divorce investigations. Carol, now visibly pregnant. I know this is incredibly inappropriate, she began, her voice trembling slightly, but I needed to talk to you. Woman to woman. Every instinct screamed to close the door in her face, to protect myself from whatever fresh pain this conversation might bring. But something in her expression, a familiar desperation I recognized from my own mirror months earlier, made me step back and allow her inside. We sat awkwardly in my reimagined living room, the woman carrying my ex-husband's child and me, surrounded by the remnants of the life he had discarded. I owe you an apology, Carol began. I knew Jake was married when our relationship started. I told myself it was already over between you two, that he was just waiting for the right time to leave. I believed what I wanted to believe. I remained silent, unsure what response she expected, or what I could possibly offer her. The reason I'm here, she continued, hands nervously cradling her pregnant belly, is because I'm starting to see patterns. The same secretiveness, the unexplained absences, the defensive reactions when I ask questions. Her eyes met mine, filled with dread and recognition. It's happening again, isn't it? He's doing to me what he did to you. The realization hit me with unexpected force. I felt no satisfaction in her distress, no vindictive pleasure in knowing Jake was repeating his patterns. Instead, I felt a complicated sympathy for this woman who had unwittingly tied her future to a man incapable of honesty. I can't tell you what to do, I said carefully. And I can't fix this for you. But I can tell you that when someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Carol nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. I have a baby coming in 6 weeks. I thought we would be a family, but now I don't know who he really is, or what our future holds. As she left my home 30 minutes later, I gave her the contact information for Patricia and Tyler, along with resources for single mothers. It was the most I could offer, a small lifeline thrown to someone drowning in the same storm I had barely survived. Watching her drive away, I felt a strange sense of closure. The anger and bitterness I had carried, while justified, had been heavy burdens. In helping Carol, I had somehow helped myself, releasing the final tendrils of resentment that had bound me to the past. That evening, I called Tyler and, for the first time, suggested dinner instead of coffee. Over Italian food and candlelight, I shared the story of Carol's visit. You could have sent her away, he observed. Many people would have. A year ago, I might have, I admitted. But I'm not the same person I was then. No, Tyler agreed, his eyes warm as they met mine across the table. You're stronger, more compassionate, more yourself. As spring turned to summer, my new life continued to unfold in ways I couldn't have imagined during those dark days after Jake's betrayal. Tyler and I moved beyond friendship into the tentative beginnings of romance, both of us proceeding with care and awareness. My home became a gathering place for friends and family, filled with laughter that no longer felt forced. I started mentoring a newly divorced woman from my support group, finding healing in helping someone else navigate the path I had already traveled. On the 1-year anniversary of my divorce, I took the day off work and drove to the beach, where Jake and I had once celebrated our engagement. Not to mourn what was lost, but to honor how far I had come. Sitting on the sand, watching waves crash against the shore, I reflected on the journey of the past 2 years. The pain of betrayal had nearly destroyed me. The discovery that my marriage was built on lies had shaken my foundation and sense of self. For months, I had questioned everything: my judgment, my worth, my ability to ever trust again. I had lost weight, sleep, and health to the stress of Jake's deception and the brutal divorce that followed. But sitting there with salt air filling my lungs, I realized I had gained something precious through that terrible fire: unshakable knowledge of my own resilience. I had faced my worst fears, stood up against intimidation, and rebuilt my life piece by careful piece. The woman I had become was stronger, wiser, and more authentically herself than the one who had once believed her value depended on being part of a perfect couple. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler. Thinking of you today. Proud of how far you've come. Dinner tonight? I smiled, typing back my acceptance. The future stretched before me, uncertain but full of possibilities I was finally ready to embrace. The betrayal that had once defined me was now just part of my story, not its conclusion. As I walked back to my car, I remembered something Dr. Winters had told me during our darkest sessions. Healing isn't about erasing the wound. It's about growing around it until it no longer limits you. Looking out at the endless horizon where sea met sky, I knew with quiet certainty that I had done exactly that. The scar would always remain, a reminder of what I had survived, but it no longer determined where I could go or who I could become. That freedom, hard-won through tears and courage, was the most valuable lesson of all. Have you ever had your trust broken by someone you loved? How did you find the strength to rebuild your life afterward? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this journey resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories of resilience and transformation. And if you know someone who might find comfort or courage in this story, please share it with them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength and healing on your own path, whatever challenges you may face.